Yeah. Yeah.
All right, so what Craig was saying, Garrett, do you have that? This is something, now, when you look at this, there's two things. There's another part we didn't even bring up yet. Total touchdowns scored by Power 5 conference. Now, I'm not sure if they're like the SEC logo's at the bottom. The SEC 258, you see the numbers. Big 12 at the bottom, 191. The SEC has how many teams?
14.
14 teams, which means they're averaging just over, it's like 18 touchdowns per school. The Big 10 has how many teams? Like right now?
14 teams.
14 teams. The Big 10's averaging about 17 touchdowns per school. How many in the ACC, Paul?
14 teams.
15 and a half touchdowns per school. How many in the Pac-12?
12.
16 and a half touchdowns per team. How many in the Big 10?
The Big 12, there's
The Big 12, I'm
there's
sorry.
10 schools.
19. So on average per team. Now, here's the other thing. Remember when the Big 12 used to get crucified because they scored too many points?
Yes.
Nobody played defense?
You remember when there was actually national television reporters that we're supposed to respect as college football analysts who still have that stereotype that they're trotting out there like a week ago and getting called out on national television?
Yeah, Acho the other day said they don't have any commitment to play defense.
Yeah.
Watch
and then
the freaking conference.
And then, and I respect what he does. I don't see a ton of it, but I know that I did see the backpedal that he attempted on Twitter afterwards when he got called out over that, and you're not fooling anybody who's actually paying attention and can think for themselves. No, what I meant was, and it's like, no, dude, we saw exactly what you meant, so you clearly weren't paying attention and you got called out on it because you still think the Big 12 is what it was in like 2015, or you're just not paying attention at all and are throwing darts blindly because that wasn't a misspeak or anything like that. That was you clearly just being off target. So not trying to single him out, but there is that reputation still. Like if people aren't even watching you enough to know that the brand of football's changed in like 4 years ago, that's a problem. Like clearly that's a problem that no one's taking the time whose job it is to take the time to even know that the style of football being played is not what it was 5 years ago. So yeah, that's part of the reputation and the image problem that they have. And in the grand scheme of things, just go out and win is all you can really do. But certainly it's an uphill battle for Brett Yormark to try and carve out a lane for them where there is a bit more respectability and you don't have so much of an image issue as they probably do right now. And credit, like I said, to the SEC, because if they had gone and, we're the best, and never won anything, we'd long ago have been like, shut up already. Like, yeah, you may care more, but you're not, whatever. But they backed it up. They absolutely backed it up. The Big Ten backed it up with a TV deal, basically. And so we're supposed to all care about that and respect that. And I guess you respect the fact that they're going to be making way more money than everybody but the SEC. And those two are clearly positioned. But after that, I have no idea kind of where most of the world sees the Big 12. And we could do this also for the ACC. We could do this for the Pac-12. They have an image problem. The ACC is kind of in no man's land, it feels like. So it's not exclusive to the Big 12, but Brett Yormark, like I said, does have his work cut out for him.
How bad does it have to be your shillery, if that's even a word, your shill factor, that you as it, we can talk about it, Craig can talk about it as a general, I've noticed several tweets, and within 5 minutes of that, we can find a tweet where the Fox college football Twitter feed is saying something that's incomplete information. It's not untrue, but it's incomplete. So yes, the SEC has scored more touchdowns than the Big 12. They have 4 more teams. God in heaven, I hope they do. I mean,
yeah, but it was positioned that way. And the other part of it was what I mentioned is that, and I saw TJ, who's a huge Texas fan, but he also loves what we do and he listens to us. He's always interchanging stuff with us. He was like, wait a minute. There was a point where, the SEC was the one that played defense, and they still have amazing defensive players, and some teams that are very good. Georgia as good as anybody, better. But it's interesting. More touchdowns, they have more teams, but also there was a time the Big 12, and in some cases it was right, but they didn't play or they didn't have many teams that seemed like they were committed to playing defense. That is not the case. That doesn't mean you won't see 50-45. You will. But that right there was interesting.
You're going to see that. Now, I mean, here's the problem is that the folks who were slow to catch up to the fact they've been playing some defense the last 5 years or so. I mean, certain clubs have. Iowa State, Baylor, certainly. TCU under Gary Patterson. And then kind of off and on at some other places. But now there's a little bit of a mix. And so you will see Texas Tech or Kansas who are out there basically playing old school Big 12 football on offense. And so now you're almost right again just by default if your opinion didn't change from 5 years ago. Except for if you try and say that they're not playing defense at all, like Acho did, then that's what exposes you, because you clearly are not paying attention or following the league very closely. And I read through his entire, and I'm not trying to single him out. I'm really not. It's just that he's an example of an opinion I've seen just thrown out there that just, again, exposes who's saying it. But yeah, now it's kind of a mixture, but there's certainly some defense being played. I don't know how you watch Baylor, for example, as you know, often as we do, obviously, and think that there's not defense being played.
All right, Patrick, you said, hey, come on, guys. Come on, Craig. The SEC's been a one-trick pony called Alabama. Sure, LSU got one. LSU's had 3 since 2000.
Yeah. LSU started
Georgia
the party,
won.
buddy. LSU
Auburn
started with the Oklahoma win when Oklahoma was like the greatest team of all time, and they went and beat Oklahoma. What was that, 21-14, and in New Orleans at the Superdome. And then that's basically when the ball started rolling for the SEC. You had Cam Newton after that. You had Alabama's dynasty. You had Florida with Tebow and Urban and Hernandez and the Pounceys and all those. I mean, yeah, it was like one after the other. So
Alabama's had the most of them, but they've had 5 different teams, I believe,
they've
who have
carried
won a
it
national title. Yeah,
they've carried it. And what I'm really saying, though, is when you started to see a lot of that SEC, when that became a thing, because I don't think anybody like before 2000 remembers that being a thing at all. That wasn't. And then it started to become like this thing in the 2000s. And the reason why it worked was because you had LSU LSU backed it up like, boom, we're the SEC. Here's LSU. They're here now. And then here's Auburn and Cam. Here's Johnny and A&M. One after the other. And then, yes, all throughout there's Alabama basically being the most dominant team. Now here's Georgia. So like half the leagues won a title or basically played for one in that 20-year period and basically been involved in every single championship, or not every single one, but a majority of the championships outside of like OU, USC, and 04, and certain sprinkling of games like that, USC, Texas, but we're going all the way back to the 2000s with that. So that's my point, is that they have been consistently and multiple brands involved in the big picture and winning titles, and that's why they've been able to back that up. Otherwise, it would have just been empty and like, why are you people are nuts? Like, why are y'all so obsessed with this conference?
Yeah, but they did back it up. Yeah.
It's backed up. Yeah, that's what I was going for.
And that's what the Big 12 desperately needs, and they've had opportunities. They've had some things that have gone wrong, but man, if Oklahoma could have just won one of those after they did in 2000, if Texas could have been able to finish the deal when they had the injury in Oklahoma against Alabama, but they didn't. And since that time, you've had teams flirting. Even Oklahoma, the semifinal game and the shootout with Georgia, but they couldn't finish. And that's one of the things missing, is a national title since 2005. Lots of good stuff.